I love South African alternative music, especially when?
On a Wednesday.
One, two, three, four, five. Okay. So five of our homies are in the house. Everybody's clearly new. Welcome. This is how we roll every single Wednesday. My name is Baloyi, and this is your weekly touch-up, week 104. Make some noise for 104 weeks. So once we crossed 100 weeks, we thought it was really cool to kind of start introducing conversations because we screened a documentary at week 100, and then we got to, did a small Q&A, and we're like, oh, wow, this is nice to talk and not just perform. There's a lot to speak about when it comes to developing the alternative music scene, and it's a conversation we want everybody to be part of. So we introduced a new format in the last 3-4 weeks called Let's Touch Base. Right? Because, let's touch base. It's cold. It's winter. Let's get closer in conversation. Let's have like a slower midweek blend of real conversations and live music. So tonight is no different to what we did last week. We had incredible panelists. One of them came home again. Hey, Anita. Say, hey, Anita. So Anita dropped some insights last week with Mpo the Given. And I think that's our third panel. This would be our fourth, if I'm not mistaken. But it's really just about engaging the people operating within our space and people operating outside, and just seeing how we can, be friends and figure out how to make this money come into the scene, because, it can't just sustain itself without a little bit of an investment. So tonight we've got an incredible panel. Let's get into it, I guess. Let's introduce our first panelist. All right, so I did a little bit of splicing, found a lot of information. I'll find you. I will find you if I need information on you. It's just a fun fact about me. Cool. So, Amira Shariff, a Johannesburg-based artist manager, cultural and event producer, and multi-hyphenate creative. She's worked behind the scenes with some of Joburg's most exciting musical talent, guiding artists, brands across events, image, and strategy. With a deep foundation in visual storytelling and art direction, Amira brings a rare perspective to music, one that blends identity, intention, and impact. She's also exhibited her photography at F&B Art Fair. It is photography, right? It's not just, okay, cool. You got to check when you're a multi-hyphenate. And she studied strategic brand communications at Vega. That's true, right? See, I will find you. I will find you. Her work in Johannesburg's alternative scene, including contributions to brands like COP, which you're a co-founder of, including those contributions connected to the pulse of emerging culture. And that's why we have her here tonight. Make some noise for Amira. You get comfy while I pull out my secret stash of bios. I will find you if I need you. So, where do we begin? Cool, fantastic. So, our second panelist, tonight's topic is about balancing artist brands and just brands outside of our artistry, corporate brands and the like, and seeing what kind of synergies exist and what kind of parallels exist, because artists are brands at the end of the day, and other brands are brands as well. So how do we find ways for artists to treat themselves similarly? So our next panelist is a co-founder of Spark Up, and he is here with nearly 2 decades of brand and growth experience across companies like in his portfolio, like Nando's. Katekane Baloyi knows how to turn stories into strategy, an audience into loyalists. Whether launching Ariel into tough market, revitalizing underperforming retail strategies, or shaping e-commerce FMCG giants, his track record is all about thoughtful scale. At the intersection of data and human behavior, Katekane champions purpose-driven, insight-led growth, making him the perfect counterbalance to creative intuition. Make some noise for Katekane, ladies and gentlemen. Are you guys well? I think there's a mic somewhere, so I guess we'll just, pass that one around. So guys, again, we're speaking about artist brands and just brands in general, and how people operating within the space with bigger brands like your Nando's and etc., how we can learn from those experiences as artists, and from Amira's perspective as someone who's working with artist brands constantly, how we can find these parallels. So get a question, keep it in your mind, and we'll open up the Q&A for later. I will start with you, sir. First question, right? In corporate brand building, consistency is key, right? But how do you keep a brand human and relatable in a fast-moving digital world?
Thank you for the intro, first of all. So much pressure. Good evening, guys. So I think the short answer to that question is to be consistent, right? So as a brand, you need to show up consistently, number one. Number two, you need to show up, especially as an artist, as your authentic self, right? You, as an artist, need to figure out, like, who am I? What do I stand for? What is the product that I want to put out there? And make sure that that is showing up consistently. Now, that being said, you're also going to be evolving as you go on the journey. I'm sure you guys see some of your favorite brands. If you look over the years, there's been slight tweaks and adjustments and refreshes and rebrands here and there to make sure that the brand and the product is staying relevant. You'd also, on the journey, essentially be evolving as well as a personal brand.
Thank you for that. I want to let you guys know each panelist will get one round of applause. So when they give you that answer that slaps, you can throw that in, you can use it, but you use it because they're right in front of you. If you don't use it, then they go home without. I'm joking. No, we're good. But thank you for that, bro. Amira, there's a platform that I think before I met you, I was aware of a platform that you were involved in that, took in emerging artists, developed them through, I think, a competition. Can you just talk me briefly through what that was? And then I'll ask you the question.
Okay, cool. Hey, everyone. So myself and Uncle Party Time started a competition called Rising Star.
Yes.
And we had done our first one in Maboneng. And with Converse, Chunko, shout out to the Chunko family. They really supported the competition and really helped us kind of nurture what it meant to educate a community of young artists about the business side of the music industry, which is, I think, a side that gets very misunderstood as a young and emerging artist. We started it and we did our last one at Flame Studios, and that's where we found the likes of Blue Papi, La Cabra, Lo-Fi. Yeah. Shout out to them at the back over there. Yeah. We would get over 400 applicants across our nation. And you will be surprised at how many people want to use music as their tool of expression. But also I think the unfortunate thing is that there's such a gap about, music for young people. How to put it out there, how it gets distributed into the world, how important publishing is. So Rising Star for us was really about how do we create an informative space that can also nurture what the next generation of your Ricky Ricks are in our country, your AKAs, your Shavas, what's the next generation and what's the future for music in South Africa looking like for these young artists. And that's really what inspired me and Party Time to do it. I think we're both people who are very passionate about music, the industry, and young people, because we were once those young people. And ultimately, we need more spaces and platforms like that, because at the end of the competition, the goal for us is really like, Chunko gave it out like distribution codes, etc. For the young kids. Even if you didn't win the competition, we put a lot of them on the lineup for Greasy Tunes at Spotify. And ultimately they got to get into studio with people I think you often don't think you'll get into studio with, like a Mash Beats or a Maglera Dope Boy, and guys who are obviously, they were new and emerging at the time and have very much established themselves now.
Okay. I like that you broke it down, because there's something Katekane mentioned about, the importance of brands showing up consistently and whether it's an artist brand showing up authentically as themselves. So while I still have you, you've met a lot of these artists in these stages in their careers where they're about to make their first steps. So that's the perfect opportunity for them to be intentional about how they show up. So how do you approach brand building when it comes to artist brands from scratch? And what mistakes do you think these artists commonly make earlier on?
Yo. Look, we're coming from an agency background, and I think also being a brand strategist, you know that you learned the both sides of the coin. You know, you can have all the talent in the world, and sometimes you don't know how to put that brand and presence towards that talent out there. I think, you know, the biggest thing when it comes to like the world we live in now is you're not selling millions of CDs in a store. You're not traveling all the way to Mpumalanga to go on radio for your music to be heard in that region. You are now at the default of like this new digital era of music, you know, and this thing where like now you have to be more than just the music, more than just the talent. You have to have a brand. You have to speak to your audience at a larger scale than just the product you're putting out. They need to resonate with you. They need to know about who you are. You know, they need to be able to engage with the personality behind the music, because we don't live in an era anymore where it's just about the music, unfortunately.
Oh, thank you for that. I think something that's really important that I always think about when I think about branding as an artist is something that Amira mentioned about personality, you know, what people buy into, the emotional thing that people can buy into when it comes to an artist brand, an artist's beliefs, beyond just maybe how they look. That's when you start to package it. So that's something obviously out of a branding textbook, right? You know, so how do you think, Katekane, you differentiate between brand awareness and brand affinity, and how do you think that applies to music artists as well?
Sure. So I think the best way to answer that question would be to actually add on to Amira's points, or rather the question you asked around a mistake that artists will typically make. And I think this applies to, especially in the context of South Africa, like artistry in general, right? Where you'll come across a really dope project, but it's like, how come this thing never went mainstream? How come we didn't know this project was coming? I'm a fan of this person, but I didn't know the work was coming. And from where I'm sitting, I think it stems from the fact that a lot of artists they don't get to the point of understanding that at the end of the day, guys, the art is a product, right? You are making the art for you. And if you've got a 9-to-5 job and the art is a hobby, you can just make the art and forget about everything else. But if the art is your job, right, you need to get to a point where you're distinguishing between, cool, this is my talent to create the art, and now is the 9-to-5 of getting this art out there and getting it in front of people in a way that they're going to resonate with it and then want to buy into it, right? So when it comes to the question you're asking now around awareness and affinity, right? Such complex branding words. Guys, awareness just means that people know about you. They know about your product, right? You've done the work to run around screaming, hey, I'm Katekane, I'm a strategist, I do this, that, and the other. You guys know who I am, right? Affinity speaks to how do people feel when they're thinking about you. Like when they come across a billboard with your face on it, what feelings is that going to evoke in them, right? And again, taking it back to understanding the distinction between, cool, I'm creating art, that's my talent, I create the art, but out of that art comes a product, right? Once you understand that, you can then take a step back and ask the question, what is it going to take for people to get to know about this product, the awareness? And two, how do they need to experience this product in such a way that they are then going to build an emotional connection with it that makes them want to take action, to seek it out, to take money out of their pockets, come to your shows, buy your albums on Spotify, etc., right? Now, the easiest way to do this, and I hope you'll, in the questions that you'll ask, we'll come back to this question, to this conversation. The easiest way to do this is to get help, right? And I mean this in the sense that artists are talented in creating the art. But the problem when it comes to brand building is that everyone thinks because marketing and branding is so easily accessible, everyone can do marketing. Right? Like branding and marketing are kind of like being a DJ back in 2010. Like everybody is a marketer. Right? And we sort of we don't, and I'm not speaking as a marketer, guys, I'm not a marketer. Right? I've done marketing, I've done brand work, but I respect the space enough to know that I am not a marketer. Like there's so much, in the same way as you guys have that certain feel for the artistry that you create, true marketers, true brand builders also have that feel for, cool, this is the product tangibly, this is how I put it across to an audience. And because it's something that is so easily accessible, right? All of us can go out and get a license, so we all think we're Lewis Hamilton and Michael Schumacher. You're not. Right? So go out, go out and get the help from those people who are the experts. The same way people will come to you and say, hey man, I need this piece of art that speaks to people in a certain way. Go out and find the people, say, hey, I want to build a brand that speaks to people in a certain type of way, that makes them feel a certain type of way, that makes them want to do a certain type of thing. So in terms of building up that awareness and driving that love for your brand, go out and get the help that you need.
I like to say, thank you. Oh, that's your one. Yeah. So something I like to say with the team, Otebs and L, is no budget shouldn't mean no movement. And if you do that shit yourself, you start to show improvement till you afford for someone else to do it. At least you're not as clueless. But if you know the things that she knows, then you can hit her up, just hit that email in her bio and bring your budget this way. You know, that's something I always just tell myself, that figure it out, but always let the experts do their thing. And I studied graphic design, but I didn't study graphic design to be a graphic designer. I studied it so I could apply it into my entrepreneurial endeavor as a musician. And I feel like you've done something very similar. Your background in strategy, you know, and visual communication, you've been applying, whether intentional or unintentional, that's who you are. And when you see like an artist brief, you know, you kind of know where you send your mind. You know, there's things you've been doing for non-music related projects that you're able to apply. So I'm curious, if you were to apply things like strategy, what does it look like when the product is a person? And how do you maintain authenticity while also trying to scale the reach?
That felt like two questions, but okay. I mean, also just to lead off of your point, it's so, you know, it's one thing to ask for help. It's also another thing to be willing to learn and to understand that we live in a world where you have to choose to be a multidisciplinary artist. My journey started in music. My dream was to go to Juilliard. I'm not a Juilliard. I'm sitting here with you guys telling you about strategy. So, you know, I started with music, and in my mind, that was everything. And then I fell in love with photography and image making and the process of making films and telling stories. So I majored in visual literacy. And ultimately, you know, going into strategy, it was like needing to understand that being strategic falls into every industry you're in, not just advertising, not just, you know, the world of how do we get consumers to eat Nando's. It literally is, you know, life is strategy. And I think knowing how to place something you're trying to put out into the world, in this case, your brand as an artist, is about knowing who you are, understanding what the pillars of who you are that you want to communicate. And I think that end product is ultimately an intuition thing. Honestly, like, you kind of know and feel when something's for you, you know? Like, for example, I'll take some of my artists, and I'll take Blue as an example. Blue doesn't know how to graphic design, but he understands what he's trying to visually communicate. So he understands, you know, what font he likes, what he doesn't like. He might not be able to put it together because there's someone else with that skill set to do so. But ultimately, the mere fact that he knows the direction he wants and he knows his end goal and all of it is enough to get anyone who helps you make that final product. That's strategy in itself. So have a plan, know what it means. It doesn't mean create a pitch deck. It doesn't mean have a deck. Just have an idea of what your short-term to long-term goals are for yourself, whether it's in music, whether it's in graphic design, whether it's in illustration, art. Maybe you want to be the best drummer in the world. Understand what it is you're doing for yourself and why. And I think ultimately knowing the direction you're trying to go into is the most important thing, to knowing the end goal of where that product goes, you know, where you want it to go, why you want it to go somewhere. I mean, recently someone asked me how I feel about my photographs being on Instagram or galleries, and I went, I can't feel anything about it because the two worlds can't exist without each other. So the same applies to music. You know, the art world and the music industry are not very far off. Galleries are record labels too. So, you know, in that sense, you decide where you want to put your work out, and you live in a world where it's not extremely hard, but you need to have your own strategy. You need to know what you want. Because what's the point? It's also hard to help people who don't know what they want. Can't come and tell me you want to be the next biggest rapper in Mzansi. That's great. You and 500 other kids want to be the next biggest rapper in Mzansi. So you need to come with a plan and know what it is, you know, and know for yourself, because no one knows you better than yourself. I'm the 20%, you're the whole 80%. So you have to care about it and nurture it as much as the people who help you make that end product. And if it means having other interests, you know, I always tell artists, yes, music's your first love, great. But if you want to try out what it's like to be an editor, just for the sake of like having the skill, that's important, because you're building, as an artist, you're building your company. So when you build a company, right, don't expect your management, your team to do everything for you. Everything they know how to do, you must also know how to do. Show up to the meetings. If you don't know how publishing works, go to the publishing meeting. You know, understand everything that your team is doing for you. You need to know the back and the front of all of it. And I think that's the biggest gap artists in this industry, especially young artists, have, is because there's no access to that knowledge. So you really have to take the initiative to self-teach yourself. Even when I got interested in artist management, I didn't know anything. And I still don't know everything. And I don't think we all know everything all the time. But you learn along the way, and you have to be willing to learn and understand what you don't know. And the thing is, the artists you work with, and it's a mutual thing, vice versa, also need to be wanting to know how that thing works. You know, how does distribution work? How do the DSPs work? What does it mean pitching to a Spotify, to an Apple Music? If you don't know it, what's the point of me as your manager knowing it?
Thank you, Amira. I think... Are you content with... There we go. So you reminded me in your answer about a title that I've given what I consider the modern artist in music, the artist entrepreneur, right? That's the modern artist, and I don't think we even have a choice but to be that, because those other 500 guys who want to be the biggest rappers in Mzansi, they're also dropping on Friday, the same day as you. And people need to make a decision why they're going to stream yours and not theirs. And that's where you have no choice but to think strategically, like our panelists have said. The word rollout is kind of a buzzword now, but the agencies have been using it for years. It just means really like doing something multi-sensory. In the digital age, you can only look at cover art or you can listen to the music. We've got 5 senses, guys. You know, what's going to remind people to go back to your release next week Friday or that other Friday, because they don't have anything to hold. So if you're strategically telling a story that stretches beyond the out now, you're an artist entrepreneur. At least, you know, that makes you, you know, in the running for artist entrepreneurship. But, you know, these agencies have been doing it for years. So Katekane, tell me, what are brands doing that artists aren't doing, that they could do or should be doing?
6 words. Show up, have a plan, 7 words, for how, right? Show up. Like, at the end of the day, I'm a content creator. I've had so many of these conversations that I've recorded, and there's so many gems that are coming out of there, but it's all sitting on a hard drive unedited, right? And so sitting here, I can't be disappointed that I've got 20 views on YouTube and 5 subscribers, because I haven't done the work, right? In my head, I know what work needs to happen, but I don't have a plan for doing it. I'm like, I know editing needs to happen, but I never plan to say, cool, I'm going to sit down and 5 hours of editing every day until all of the stuff is done. And then 3 hours of scheduling until all of the stuff is out. And then reposting and sponsoring and, right? And that's what brands do, right? They sit down and they say, guys, we've got this product that's going to market. We need to, again, that awareness word, get people aware of the product, make sure they know about it. But also, it's not enough for us to just drop the product on a random Friday and expect that people are going to buy it, right? We're not Beyonce, right? There's work that needs to happen in order to make sure that people are aware of the product and they buy into it. And that requires planning. It requires upfront planning where you sit down 6 months ahead of time and say, cool, guys, this thing is coming. What is this thing? Where do we want people to see it? Which people do we want to see it? How do we want them to see it? Okay, cool. Then what are we doing in order to enable that happens? And it's something that in the business space, regardless of the business, whether you are selling water, whether you're selling clothing, whether you're selling food, every single business that you go to, these things are happening. And that also needs to be happening within the artist space, right? It's something which I think as an artist you need to take ownership of. And I love the example that was given here, because at the end of the day, guys, as an artist, you are the CEO of your product, right? I watch a fair amount of basketball content, and I came across this. There was a conversation between a player and an agent happening, and the agent was saying, and I think it's a similar scenario in this space as well. Guti, you get these guys who are incredibly talented at playing the sport. They get into the major leagues, and because they've got an agent, they now, cool, I've got an agent. You guys want to pitch me something? Let my agent take care of it. And that is absolutely the wrong approach, because one, that's a recipe. It's a recipe for you getting screwed over. That's number one. And number two, you miss out on so many opportunities because you don't become aware of the work that is required in order to execute. As an artist, you don't have to be an editor. You don't have to be the one that's putting stuff out there. You don't have to be the one that's doing all the business stuff, but have an understanding and also understand that the people in your team are the ones working for you. It's not the other way around. As soon as you give that agency to an agent, you give it to an editor, you give it to a producer, all of a sudden now you're working for them. And back at the ranch, it's your name that's on the billboard. So you need to take ownership of that, right? And in taking ownership of that, you also need to be the one that's driving the planning, driving the thinking, right? You don't necessarily need to know, cool, I need to do a billboard, I need to do 5 tweets, I need to do this, and that. But you need to know that, cool, there must be a plan for awareness, and push your team to say, guys, what are the things that we're doing to drive that awareness? Right? What are the things that we're doing to make sure that once this thing is out, when people see the billboard, they're then going to go through to Spotify? Do we have QR codes? Do we have a website? Is the name clear enough for them to be able to go on their phone quickly and search, cool, this is my name, this is my project? Those are the things that we need to be doing in order to make sure that we've got that visibility. So 7 words: show up, have a plan for how. I think it was 7 words.
No, give them. I said 1, but please just, yeah. Before I open up to the floor, I have one last question for you, Amira, and it's actually the inverse of what I asked you, Katekane. There's a lot to learn from brands, as brands that we're developing ourselves. But I think, we're on the ground. We're the artists. We connect with people in ways that, a machine itself or a product manager or brand manager might not, because we're here all the time, right? So there's a lot that brands could also learn from us. So I'm curious, what can corporate brands learn from artist brands about staying culturally relevant and emotionally resonant?
Randstad, you keep coming with English, boy. Okay, I work with brands, and I work with brands in many respects, activations. And with all due respect, love you guys at PepsiCo though, shout out. Look, brand managers aren't so different from artists in the sense that often artists come from a space of wanting to express themselves and maybe not coming from a space of maybe a space from a yearning for belonging, right? Or creating belonging for communities. And brand managers, often we're frustrated with them, and I'm looking at Anita because we go, and Andy, we go through this all the time, whether it's sponsorships for events or finding your artist a campaign. And brand managers want to belong too. They just don't know how. They want to be a part of the culture. They're just not there. They're just busy at Saint popping bottles and at Zoo. And that's the real problem, right? No, it's not you. It's not you, I promise. But that's what I find has always been the biggest issue is, even getting a brand manager to come to something like this, it's so hard. I don't know why, and I think that for me is something I wish corporates could do better of, because even in the sense, just add onto what you're saying about elevating your brand strategically, I work with artists some artists who are so big in the world, I've worked with Lag, I've worked with Jazik, and a lot of it is these artists have massive followings, massive brand exposure for their own brand. Now the issue is, how do we tie that brand to another brand that has the money to sponsor and fund your brand to elevate the experience of what consumers feel? So brand alignment is one thing when it comes to building your strategy. Have long-term goals in terms of understanding how other brands work and what their positioning is. Because I'll tell you now, they change their positioning every 6 months. So stay tapped in. It's hard. The corporate world's not a straightforward world. It's not a black and white world, Brands change their positioning every quarter, in my opinion. And even then, it's like us creating, I'll take Lag for an example, right? We created an event entity for him in order for him to stay directly in touch with his direct community of super fans, in order for him to elevate the experience of his own brand. Now, it's a very micro way of elevating the experience of your brand. But now what that does, right, is you go to a liquid fruit, like PepsiCo, or a Doritos, and maybe 500 out of the 1,000 fans at DJ Lag's event are Doritos consumers, And you need to show the brand where their KPI is. So it's a two-way relationship. You've got to show them the value. Don't sell yourself. Sell them where they're going to make money. And I'm telling you things they're not going to tell you. You're not going to learn this at Vega. You're not going to learn this at varsity. You're not going to learn this at marketing school. Something they don't tell you is that the best way to sell yourself to a brand is show them how they make money back. So understand that when you do approach brands, don't tell them how great you are. They don't care. They just don't. Doesn't matter if you got 2 million streams on your Spotify. They don't care, guys. And that's just the reality of fighting the brand to talent world and talent to brand world. Sometimes you find brand managers are only tapped into 1 or 2 artists at that moment in time, but it's because that's the only thing they've been exposed to. So it gives them a sense of belonging. So also understanding you need to speak their language as much as you want them to speak your language, And yeah, man, to corporates, just show up, man. Show up in the spaces, If you want a community, care about community. You're not too cool for it either. Just because you wear a suit every day and some of us wake up at 10 and smoke a joint and then go to the studio. It doesn't mean what you do or what I do is any less of or than. It just means how we're doing it is differently. So meet me halfway, I meet you halfway, but just show up. I think to the artists, show up. To the brand managers, show up. Care. You want to care about culture? Go to, Kwalfontein. You know what I mean? No matter how corporate you are, listen to kids rapping, even if you don't care about it, That's how you care. That's how you tap into what kind of consumers there are out there. Else you're going to keep selling products to niche communities, and niche communities aren't the masses. It's not the people. That thing is not real. It's not. Niche is not real. It's not the people, guys. So even when you make music, think about the masses. Think about the 9-to-5ers. Think about the communities that aren't in these cool spaces like what we're sitting in right now. Those are your real consumers for any product.
Thank you. you wanted to add?
So, guys, can I be brutally honest with you guys? It's safe space, right?
Maybe.
It's people deliver what they measured on. Brand managers are measured on their ability to maximize turnover at the end of the year. So it's not that brand managers don't care about artists, it's that, and this is the brutal honesty, it's not relevant to them. And when I say it's not relevant, I'm not saying it's not important, it can't move the needle. A lot of people in corporate spaces don't understand how you guys move the needle for them, right? Now, I'm gonna give you guys a little framework that you can use. You don't have to use the language exactly, but just so that the thinking is there, right? And it goes back to the question I was asked at the beginning about showing up in a digital world.
Yeah.
You guys must go and research this thing called I think you can Google e-commerce funnel. At the top of the funnel, you've got awareness. Then you move to consideration. Then you move to purchase. And then you move to, so purchase is conversion. And then you move to advocacy and retention, right? What you guys have as artists, typically you've got this massive awareness. You've got an audience, right? What you guys need to be doing when you're talking to brands, when you're talking to corporates, is paint the story for them in terms of how you are going to take your audience and make it their audience. So driving that awareness for them. And then how you are going to walk the journey with your audience from awareness to considering the product, and from considering the product to actually converting and purchasing that product. And once they've purchased that product, how are you making sure that those people that have purchased now become advocates for that brand? If you guys can figure out how to do that, and you're having that conversation when you're going for sponsorships and you're trying to get people to give you money, that's going to be a game changer for you. So if you take nothing else away from today, please take that away. Go and research the consumer purchase funnel and see how you can take your brand and bake that into what you're offering.
Make some noise for our panelists. Thank you, Amira. Thank you, Katekane. I'm going to open the floor to 3 questions, maybe a 4th. We've got like 20 minutes and it's live music time. So hands up, and then the gentleman in the cardigan will give you the mic.
Hi, I'm Julian, also known as Kung Fu Kenny. Bala once is coming with thought-provoking questions. You guys are dropping gold that industries don't just give. Congrats and well done. So my question is now, as art people who work with artists, whether in advertising, branding, representatives, it's always easier to do it for other people. Now, as an artist, when you've gone through all the work, like you said, the e-commerce funnel, really great example, by the way, and you reach that halfway point, now you feel like, I'm stuck in a plateau. Where do I go from here? I've done the work, but nothing is happening. People have recognized me, I hit this high, and now I'm down here. How do I wade through that? How do I push through that? How do I get out of it and gain traction again?
Something that I struggle a lot with kind of hitting that brick wall, and it takes time to get to a realization that you've hit a brick wall. Once I get to that point of realizing that I've hit the brick wall, I'd like to ask myself the question, what problem do I need to solve next? You don't need to solve all of your problems in one go. You're not going to swim across the entire ocean in one day. It's about figuring out what is the problem right in front of me, right? And again, the reason I want you guys to research that funnel is so that you can understand it and sort of bake it into the things that you're doing on a day-to-day basis. Because if you can do that, you get to a point where you start to understand the data that comes behind it, right? It's a whole other conversation around the data. But essentially, once you get to a point where you're understanding, are people getting stuck at awareness? Are they getting stuck at consideration? Are they getting stuck at purchase? You can then now start to diagnose and deal with the problem, right? So if you've had 1 or 2 brand engagements and brands have come on board and they've worked with you and it's great, but after that you see they're not coming back, they're not answering you anymore, you can then go back and assess, okay, cool, we did this campaign. Did we manage to drive that awareness? Tick. We got people to consider, they visited their website. Tick. But Did their sales grow? Their sales didn't grow. Then you can start to think about, okay, what do I need to do differently in my approach to make sure that when we get there, people aren't hitting a bottleneck, but rather flowing through to convert the sale. And so it's always a case of when you hit that wall, when you hit rock bottom, when you get to a place where you don't know what else to do, you need to ask yourself, okay, like what's the one problem that I need to solve next? And the easiest way is to kind of go back and say, in terms of what I've been executing, where are people sitting and having a bottleneck and not moving forward to the next step, and you solve for that.
Hello. Hey, y'all. Oh,
Oh, no, I just wanted to add.
No,
I think
go for it.
I think you've said it perfectly. I think another thing is, and I like to connect it to identity, is I don't think identity has a finish line. And even when you're an artist, you know, that identity is ever evolving. So there's no full stop to it. So even when you're being strategic with a brand, you know, a campaign can work for a month, but in the second month, you're on a new problem statement. A campaign is birthed from a problem statement. So understand you could have 7 different problem statements in the space of 3 months for one campaign. So understand that you're, as an artist or creator, are ever evolving. There's no full stop. There's never finished. It's never done. So it's a balance of problems, literally. That is what it is.
Hey, y'all. Again. So I wanted to ask, in a place like South Africa, how does an artist, I guess, avoid becoming like a micro trend? What infrastructure do you need to maybe maintain your brand being something that I think people can find worthwhile, or at least, what would you need to maintain a premium brand as for people who are, I guess, at a lower level, don't necessarily have access to things like, like a photography team or a videography team? What would you say that this is your DIY kit to make sure that you stay Woolworths? Thank you.
Damn. You know, not everyone makes it, I'll be honest. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that every artist in this room is going to be consistently amazing for life. I'm not. What I can tell you is that what you want for yourself has to come from a place of ecosystem. So I believe that we work in an ecosystem, and you'll be shocked at how many people are willing to help in exchange for something. Even if it's not monetary right now. But it's about creating, I like to call it Black creative equity, is how do you formulate your own internal for yourself, your band, you as an artist, how do you guys create your own economic ecosystem where you have your content team, maybe he's also an emerging, or she, or they're an emerging content production house, right? And they're willing to produce quality content for you and go out of their way in order to also grow themselves. And in that way, you start to move together. Maybe the next booking you get, there's enough budget to put aside for them, right? So I think artists, creatives, need to start understanding what building Black equity as a creative is. And that literally is working in ecosystems with people who are also trying to achieve some sort of goal as you know? And then it's about maintaining it after that, being consistent about it, holding each other accountable. Accountability is key in brand building, even when you're holding yourself accountable as an artist. I think especially more so as an artist. And having a team that's honest with you. If the music's not good, or a song doesn't sound quite right, or the mastering isn't on point, down to the product, down to how the product's being delivered, you need to have an ecosystem and a community that you can rely on that doesn't mind being brutally honest with you. Yeah.
If I can just add, so when I think about a premium brand, I often think about pricing and how it's not going to be for everyone. I imagine like a non-checkers shop will sell a lot and shelves will empty quicker. because of the price point versus Woolies premium quality, which won't go as quick. But, you know, if you're buying a packet of Simba chips for 100 Rand, you know, and then someone else is selling them for 5, you know, you're going to get that 100 Rand, you know, and then the 5 Rand Simba chips are going to go very quickly. It's still, how many 5 Rands do you need to make 100? You know, so I think when I think about that, it's always thinking about it's not going to be accessible to everyone if it's premium. You guys as Baloyi are playing Untitled Basement, selling tickets for 250 Rand, right? Tickets are 250 Rand for the Baloyi show. And I think we had a chat earlier about how do we now sell that to our audience already. And you find that maybe it's not for them. You know, maybe this is an opportunity to pivot into premium, right? But now, again, the problem you're faced with is, okay, do we isolate our audience? You know, because when you get to the premium stage, you need to also be able to justify a premium price point. And that's a whole nother conversation based on maybe what you're offering. But it's an interesting, you know, place for an artist when it's time to pivot, when it's time to increase your fee. You know, it means that now, you know, Weekly Touch-Up can't book you anymore, but maybe Coachella can, if that's the case, you know?
And just to add to that, so like even with events, right? I do a lot of lineups and a lot of bookings. There will be a time where, you know, I want to book, let's say you right now, for a Good Morning stage at Until. And your price then is not going to be the same as you grow when now you're on a Rockin' the Daisies stage, right? But ultimately, and going back to ecosystem, is rely on the community and the ecosystem around you to build yourself to that point, you know? Because then I know, okay, when I book Lonster for the next Good Morning show, and he's got that opener for the headliner before that, the price I paid him 3 months ago for the first Good Morning show is not the same. And I think I'm holding myself accountable, and all promoters as well, and event people. I need to understand your value and growth as an artist and as a band and as a group or whatever you may be, as much as you need to understand the value of what this platform or this event or this, you know, space can do for you to get to the Rockin' the Daisies, the Hey Neighbor stages, you know? And I think in that way, building that respect for one another is also a valuable thing. And I think to go on to that respect, don't nyat anyone. Respect everyone you meet. It's important. You never know who's who, and you never know who's going to give you that opportunity or that slot on that Rockin' the Daisies set, or who's watching you at a Good Morning show, or who's watching you at a playground, narrow by stage show, you know? And that's important. Value every single person you're around and respect the people who put you on stages, and they must respect you just the same.
Question. Don't pivot too soon, don't pivot too late.
Yo everyone, this is Kamahelo, aka Inhumane Prodigy, you know. I have a question, right? Like a deep question. I know I'm quick. So recently I was at the ARMC, which was a couple of weeks back, right? And I had a conversation with one of the ladies who works for Empire Distribution, right? So the question I have, right, which is like still branding, how do I know that like my brand, like it's like the jackpot? Because, you know, people can have brands, but then their brands are not really, you know, selling or like anything like that.
I'm doing that one too.
So I'm gonna be corny and quote, I think it was Jay-Z. He made the statement, one of the worst things you can do is become famous as someone other than yourself or something other than yourself, right? That goes back to the point we made earlier about showing up as your authentic self, right? So guys, as an artist, before you start thinking brand, before you start thinking mass audience, before you start thinking whatever, like go back to self. Like what do I want? What do I want to come out of this experience that I'm building and curating? Because at some point, you're going to sit in a room with a bunch of very clever people and come up with a brilliant brand concept. 6 years into your career, those people aren't there, right? You're the one that still needs to sit and think about producing work that speaks to that brand. And so if you've spent 6 years building this brand that doesn't really resonate with who you are, at some point, like the facade is gonna crack, right? And then it's all gonna go to shit either way, right? So point number one, make sure that it's authentic how you are choosing to show up as a brand. 2, again, it's about that feel, right? Like you as an artist know, like I'm sure you guys have been in a studio and you hear something or you make something, and as it's playing back, you're like, yeah, no, this is the one, right? Same thing with photography, same thing with video. When you guys are capturing content, you have that feeling, that sense that, cool, this is something that's going to work. It's something that's going to resonate, right? And it's really about getting to that point. And it's about going back to self. Like, what is the authentic version of me that shows up? Come up with that concept, and there, the concept can't do all of the work. There's a lot of other stuff that needs to happen around that work that we spoke about, right? So you need to make sure that you've got a plan, you've got the right team, you've got the right people around you to help you elevate that concept, right? Very few artists can be like, random Wednesday, boom, here's an album, and the world loses their mind. Same thing in companies. I can tell you, like, there's certain brands that we put on shelf that we've had to take off because we didn't do the work to build them up as brands in the eyes of the target audience. So I'd say, rather than worrying about creating a concept that speaks to people, find a concept that's authentic and then do the work to make sure that people are aware of that product and they can resonate with it in a way that drives them to action.
And that's the show, ladies and gentlemen, and everybody in between. Thank you, Amira. Thank you, Katekane. Make some noise for our panelists one more time. This is your weekly touch-up, week 104. Let's touch base, a midweek and slower blend of real conversations and live music. Now we're on the live music aspect. You guys can make your way, get yourself a warm beverage or a non-alcoholic beverage. We've got a dry bar running, so be present, get a beverage, and then we're going to move outside and we're going to have our very first act. My name is still Baloyi. I'm with L the Third, and amongst the people I know, we are normal. Hit us up online, normal.com/consultancy. Maybe you want to have another word with these guys. We can just put you in touch. But we also do consulting. Hit us up. We're artists ourselves. We love this shit because someone's got to do it. If not us, then who? One more time, make some noise for our panelists. And yeah, thank you. Oh, wait, I need to say my thing. I need to say the thing. I love South African alternative music. Especially when... Thank you.